Imagine waking up one day to find that your world has been turned upside down. Friends, neighbors, and family separated by a line drawn on a map. The partition of India and Pakistan in 1947 wasn't just the division of land. It was the division of lives, cultures, and hearts. What led to this catastrophic event? And why is the conflict over Kashmir still unresolved? Let's dive deep into this pivotal chapter in history. The partition of British India in 1947 was not an event that happened overnight. It was the culmination of years of political tension, religious divide, and colonial policies. Let's go back to the 19th century to understand the roots of this division. British India was home to diverse communities: Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, and many others. However, British policies often exploited these differences. The colonial strategy of divide and rule deepened communal divisions, making it easier for the British to govern, but harder for communities to unite against them. The early 20th century saw the rise of the independence movement, with leaders like Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, and Subhas Chandra Bose demanding freedom. However, the Muslim community, led by the All India Muslim League under Muhammad Ali Jinnah, began to feel that their voices were being overshadowed in the predominantly Hindu-led Indian National Congress. The Muslim League proposed the idea of a separate state, Pakistan, arguing that Muslims needed their own homeland to protect their political and cultural identity. This idea gained traction in the 1940s, especially after the Lahore Resolution of 1940, where the demand for Pakistan was officially articulated. World War II accelerated the process. Britain was severely weakened after the war, both economically and politically, and could no longer maintain its empire. Meanwhile, the Indian independence movement grew stronger, with widespread protests, strikes, and demands for self-rule. To hasten their exit, the British decided to transfer power quickly. But the question was, to whom? Should India remain united, or should it be divided into two nations? The answer was complex, as religious tensions between Hindus and Muslims had reached a boiling point. The British Viceroy, Lord Louis Mountbatten, proposed partition as a solution, believing it would prevent a civil war. The partition was implemented through the Indian Independence Act of 1947, creating two nations, India and Pakistan. Pakistan consisted of two geographically separate regions, West Pakistan, modern-day Pakistan, and East Pakistan, now Bangladesh. To determine the borders, the British appointed a lawyer named Cyril Radcliffe, who had never visited India before. He was given just 5 weeks to draw the boundary lines, known as the Radcliffe Line. These borders were based on religious demographics but failed to account for the complexities of local communities, leading to confusion and chaos. When the borders were announced, they triggered a massive migration. Over 15 million people, Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs, were forced to leave their homes to move to the correct side of the border. Entire villages and towns were emptied and new ones were formed. But the migration was anything but peaceful. The partition led to one of the largest human migrations in history, but it came at a terrible cost. Communal violence erupted on an unprecedented scale. Villages were burned, families were slaughtered, and women were subjected to unspeakable horrors. It's estimated that 1 to 2 million people lost their lives during this period. Trains carrying refugees often arrived at their destinations filled with corpses. Survivors carried the trauma of losing their homes, families, and identities. The partition didn't just divide land, it tore apart lives, cultures, and histories. Amidst the chaos of partition, the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir became a major flashpoint. At the time, princely states had the choice to join either India or Pakistan, or remain independent. Kashmir, with its Muslim-majority population and a Hindu ruler, Maharaja Hari Singh, was caught in a dilemma. Initially, the Maharaja opted for independence, but when tribal militias from Pakistan invaded Kashmir in October 1947, he sought help from India. India agreed, but only on the condition that Kashmir would accede to India. The Maharaj signed the Instrument of Accession, and Indian troops were sent to defend the region. This decision sparked the First Indo-Pak War, 1947 to 1948. A ceasefire was brokered by the United Nations, dividing Kashmir along the line of control, LOC. However, both India and Pakistan continued to claim the region in its entirety. Kashmir remains one of the most militarized zones in the world, with its people enduring decades of conflict and unrest. The partition left a deep and lasting impact on South Asia. It created two nations with fundamentally different identities: India as a secular state with a Hindu majority, and Pakistan as a homeland for Muslims. But it also left behind unresolved issues, particularly in Kashmir. Some argue that partition was necessary to prevent a full-scale civil war between Hindus and Muslims. Others believe that better planning or even avoiding partition altogether could have averted decades of bloodshed. The question remains, was partition a solution or the root of the region's problems? More than 75 years later, the scars of partition still linger. The conflict over Kashmir remains a sensitive and unresolved issue, with countless lives affected. Yet, history shows us that healing is possible. The future of India, Pakistan, and Kashmir depends on mutual understanding and dialogue. As we reflect on this tragic chapter in history, let's remember the resilience of those who endured it. By learning from the past, perhaps we can hope for a more peaceful and united future. If you found this story insightful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share your thoughts. Was partition the right decision, or could a united India have been a better solution? Let's keep the conversation going.